I do experience life not as it's seen, but perhaps as that mystical, imagine of it, like, because I know my mother is here, and I know when people show up in my life, she has something to do with it. And I love the fact that the conversation can continue beyond this reality into another. And I'm always looking for those signs, like you keep speaking to. And I find them, and I find them all the time.
Hello, and welcome to Grief, Gratitude, and the Gray in Between podcast. This podcast is about exploring the grief that occurs at different times in our lives, in which we have had major changes and transitions that literally shake us to the core and make us experience grief. I created this podcast for people to feel a little less hopeless and alone in their own grief process as they hear the stories of others who have had similar journeys. I'm Kendra Rinaldi, your host. Now, let's dive right into today's episode. Oh, you guys are in for a treat today as you listen to this interview with Meg Nocero. I didn't even ask how to pronounce your last name before I started to record. Meg Nocero, the last
It's
name?
Nocero, but that's the way that
Nocero.
people say it in Miami.
Nocero. Yeah, because I'm Latina. Nocero. Nocero. But Nocero. Nocero.
Yeah.
Nocero. Okay. So with Meg Nocero, now you guys got to hear her voice. So Meg is a former Department of Homeland Security attorney. She is an author, which that's one of the things that's actually going to be part of the focus of today's interview. And she is a mom, which, as what she said, is her favorite role and the most what?
Challenging.
So welcome, Meg. Excited to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here to talk to you and your audience. We already have so much in common. I know it. So
I know. Well, just when I was reading the book, then when I read the part that you had been an exchange student in Colombia, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to message her on Instagram so she knows I'm from Colombia before we
I love it.
hop on. I wanted to know what city. It doesn't happen to be the same city as me, but that's so cool that you already know a little bit of who you're talking to as well. Now, Meg, there's like a whole bunch. I was like asking you like, what do I say? Because there's so many things I could say of what you are and who you are, because you're also have your podcast, Manifesting with Meg, Conversations with Extraordinary People, which is also a YouTube channel. You've done a TEDx talk, which is entitled Wake Up, How to Create a Better Story for a Happier Village. And you've met a lot of famous people, a lot of people that people have in their vision board, on their vision board. And you are probably an expert then at manifesting, because you've manifested a lot of things in your life.
Yeah, I'd like to say that I like to play with the universe, and I think that for me, I'm like the kind of person who's the reluctant evolutionist. Like I don't want to change, and if I don't have to change, I'll hold on. So it has to be a pretty big something that happens to me to like, okay, this is like a big sign. I gotta move forward.
Yeah. And we are talking about a big thing that happened and how that was basically the catalyst for a lot of the other things that started to happen after that. So today we'll be talking of your book and really the story behind your book. And people can read the book and find a lot of the details. But the book is Butterfly Awakens, a memoir of transformation through grief. So, take us into that, and what was your grief journey that was the catalyst for all these different
All of these things.
changes and an amazing journey that you had ahead.
Yeah. So in 2011, my mother basically succumbed to breast cancer. She passed away April 12th, 2011. And from that point on, my life has not ever been the same. I can say, well, before that point, because the grieving process certainly begins before you actually
Mhm.
lose the person that you love. I think the threat of loss, kind of has you negotiating with the world a little differently. But yeah, that was the point in time where I really, I would say, fell to pieces. Like I fell apart. Like, it's like so funny. We fall apart to be built back up again,
Mm.
hopefully stronger. I certainly believe that with my particular journey, I am a stronger person nowadays than I was,
Mhm.
although definitely an emotional one. So my sensitivity gets me many times. It's like my superpower at the same time. It could be like the other side of the coin, right?
Ditto, ditto here. It is exactly that empathy component that we have, and that relation. It's our superpower, but it is also our Achilles heel. I can't even pronounce Achilles. How do I say it? Talón
Achilles.
de Aquiles. Talón de Aquiles. I'll just say that. So, take us then into when your mom was diagnosed. Then, what did you said you didn't cope well. So, what were some of the tools you used during that time? And from diagnosis to her passing, how long was that?
So it was really interesting. It was kind of a point in my life when she found out she had cancer. I was 6 months pregnant with my daughter, so it was an exciting time. At the same time, I was dealing with hyperemesis gravidarum, which is really like severe nausea
Mm,
when you're pregnant, and it's like you really feel like, is this happening? And I chose this because I did choose to have another child, and you're just
mhm,
like, oh my god, I don't know how to even make through the day. And it was very interesting because my mother had been nursing me back to health. We were all super excited. It was girl. We had all these boys, and we finally had a girl. And she really was the one to be my rock, that I could hold on to. And then, finally it started to pass somewhat, still bad. But then, I got a phone call and she dropped the C word on me.
mhm.
She found out that she did, in fact, have cancer. And I remember it was just like the whole world just swallowed me up. I was just like I was very, very like dizzy. It was a really incredible, like trying to hold on to something because you
Mm,
feel like your world is just going to change. So when you're asking me what the first, when I found out, until basically the end, it was a process of, so that was 2008 when I found out, and then she passed away in 2011. So it was about 3 years. We had
mm,
a point in time after Ava was born, my daughter was born. She was in remission for maybe 4 months, but it came back again with a fury in her liver. But that being said, I'm not a person who is like, the world is coming down on me, unless the world is coming down on me and I feel like I don't see, the light.
mhm,
But with my mom, it was like, okay, well, you know what? We're gonna work through this. You just helped me. I'm gonna help you. You got this. We're gonna, come out, victorious. Certainly, find the right doctors, find the right cures, find the right everything. And I was like really set out to be this inspiring light for her. And we had moments where, there were a lot of good news in the path. Chemotherapy is a terrible thing. Um, to watch someone go through that, and it takes away their dignity a lot, because she was dealing with the same kind of nausea that I was dealing with when I was pregnant. It's really humbling, and my
mhm.
mother was a force to be reckoned with. She was a strong woman. She stood her ground, independent, really a force. So it was really hard to see her, having to deal with those limitations. um you know, the process is the process. I have asked many people in my own life, while I was going through it, does this ever feel better? Right? Does
Mhm.
this
Yes.
ever change? And they're like, you'll never get over the loss. It just dulls over time, that incredible stab
Mhm.
pain into your heart, like the writer that I am, the pulsating pain that, oozes sorrow. It was just that, it was oozing
Wait,
sorrow.
say all those descriptive words again. The sorrow and the pain that oozes
Yeah.
sorrow. Like,
Yeah.
it's so
Yeah, the
true. It's like
pulsating pain from a stab in the
pulsating
heart
pain.
that oozes sorrow.
Oh my gosh, you're so good with words. My gosh, and it's so true. Like, it's amazing. It's so true. Like, yeah, so it no longer, it just dulls that a little bit. But then there's times in which it could still creep up again and feel again like the pulsating pain. Like, I tell people it's not about the time at all,
Yeah.
because there's other times in your life in which something will come up. I'll just give an example, like somebody gets married, or
Mhm.
something like that. Those kind of even happy occasions in which then the grief can then be back again, like, oh my gosh, I don't have this person by my side in this very special moment, right? And all these things come right back up as if it had just
Right
been
back up.
yesterday.
Like she should be here to
Yes.
celebrate with us.
Right. So
She should
yeah.
be here to experience this. Yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely. Or
Hmm.
even selfishly for me, for
Hmm.
me, because when anything good happens, I would call
Who do I
her.
call?
And
Yeah, who do I call? Yeah, my sister had to get used to being the one I'd call during these times when when my mom passed away, and then I realized one time in conversation with her, I'm like, I realized something that I've noticed in the last couple of days. I've been talking a lot to you and not with you.
yeah,
And I realized that that's not fair. I think I'm using you, in that grief journey. And sometimes it would bounce back and forth. Sometimes I'd be the receiving, but there was one week I remember that it had been a lot. And for me, acknowledging that and noticing, she was like, "Thank you," because she was kind of feeling like she was my go-to to call and that. And so anyhow, so yes, I can totally understand. Back to you because this is not about me. So so then in that journey then of certain waves of the of hope that you were given in that process, as you that's the thing, you're dealing with these waves of emotions of hope when she's in remission, then back again. So it's like you pull the rug gets pulled from under you several times in that journey.
yeah. I think the most profound memory that I still look back on, and it's the empath in me, right? How I would react to other people. You know, it's kind of like she's gone. It's time back to go back to life again, like to go back to the way things were. And you and I both know that'll never happen.
Mm-mm.
There's never going to be life again as we knew it before that loved one passed. So, I mean, it's just not, I'm not saying it's not going to be good again or
It's
great again.
different, right?
I'm just saying it's not going to be the same again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people outside of you, the external people, are people who love us. They're like, come on, come back to being who you were before. And I honestly did really fear that I would never be able to laugh again after my mother died. Like pure laughter, like that joy that would exude. And I'm even telling you, like my first book is The Magical Guide to Bliss. I had to literally write my own guide to get myself back to some semblance of bliss because I couldn't imagine that would be a terrible thing to grieve, is never feeling happiness again.
Mm.
That would be worse than the actual loss of my mother. I think she would grieve that for me, to be quite honest with you. That would be terrible. She would never want that. She would never want
And I wonder, do you feel that the part of feeling bliss, feeling joy again, is this notion, maybe culturally or whatever, that if we feel happy, it's as if we have stopped missing them or stopped loving them and so forth? Do you feel that there is that aspect there that does not allow us to know that joy can exist even in our grief?
Absolutely. One of the things that I was processing, first of all, is that I felt I failed. I was
Mm.
supposed to be this inspirational, guru champion, that I was going to get my mother to have that whole mind, body, spirit kind of interplay where, her body could get the healing, because I just kept bombarding her with, Mom, you can't think that way. Don't be negative, whatever. And I felt like I failed her. So if
Mm.
I actually experienced happiness again, it was as if the guilt would overwhelm me. It's like,
Mm.
how could I feel that when I failed my mother?
Mm.
And wow, it's intense. I mean, whoever would, like, I mean, literally, I had to get to a place in my life where I had to be accountable to myself. You cannot dictate anyone else's journey. That is their journey as well as my own. I have agency over that. But, I mean, you kind of think that I could have done more to help her, and I didn't. And I just, at that point, it felt just entirely bad. So not only was I grieving her loss, but I was also really beating myself up, really beating
Mm.
myself up. And so I just felt like not feeling would be the best route to go, just being completely numb to life again. And that is where, the happiness component just didn't feel right anymore. And, it's interesting because our bodies on a physiological level will start talking louder, at our own health issues, if we're not taking care of ourselves and paying attention, which is what happened to me. I came down with tinnitus, which is the screaming in
The
my
ear.
ear.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what? And I went for MRIs. I like, what is going on here? Is this a crazy universal joke where I just went through this terrible experience with my mother and now it's coming back to haunt me? I was like, what, and of course my imagination, being a creative person, I would just take flights of fancy, and therein lies, all the best horror stories. I imagine I literally cannot watch them. I don't want to, but I was like, wow, I'm getting punished, huh? Is this the punishment I get? Which reality is my body is begging me to wake up to my life again. So, I can look at it
Like
to
an alarm clock. You're basically
totally.
hearing an alarm clock in your ear, like, "Choo,
Yes.
wake up,
Yes.
Meg."
Yes.
You
I
have
did like,
children to be
yes.
present to, your
Yes.
husband, all this, your life
Yeah.
is still ahead. Huh.
Yeah. That is kind of an easy,
Right.
that's the
So
best example. It's alarm clock. Yeah.
how
Love
did
it.
you manage to then be able to address it, since it was an emotional since your physical representation, it was a physical representation of your emotions.
Yeah.
How was that being able to take care of the ringing of your ear?
Right. Well, so they wanted to give me a lot of antidepressants, anti-anxieties, and I'm like, I barely wanted to get married and commit my life to one person for the rest. Imagine of committing yourself to a drug for the rest of your life. I like, no, thank you. Not that it's not a listen. I'm not an anti anything. I'm like, go and do what you got to do for you. And I was literally like, there has to be tools out there to help me somehow calm my nervous system down. I was like, this is what I'm just completely, I was having panic attacks. My anxiety was through the roof, especially, I don't know if you've had this experience as well, but the 3 o'clock in the morning wake up call yourself, walking around going, why am I awake at
It's
3 o'clock?
stress. It's
Yeah.
stress. Anytime it's 3 a.m., it's stress waking up.
Absolutely. So I started. One of my very dear friends basically picked me up at my office and drove me to an acupuncturist, where she was the most incredible, calming um, doctor who just sat me down, listened to me. And I didn't feel like she had to listen to me. I felt like she wanted to listen to me and help
Mm.
me. So that was the first step in my healing process, as far as, getting the empowered tools I needed to, navigate my life differently. Because, I've accepted the fact that the ringing comes when I'm stressed. It comes back. It's like, oh, I need to chill myself out big time. But I also know how I still go to acupuncture. I still do all the modalities I've learned. Tapping was wonderful. I do this butterfly pose that's incredible. I love that it's called the butterfly
Oh.
pose too. It's a tapping, like a nurturing. What babies are tapped when they're baby and they're calm them down. That mother will do to their child. That's what you do to yourself, and then you visualize yourself in the place that makes you happiest, which is for me the beach. Take me to the beach. Take me to the beach, and it's
And
always my vitamin C.
you do live near the beach. You're in
Yes,
Miami, so
yes,
right?
yes, for sure, for sure, for
That's
sure.
so awesome. So you were able then to take care of that. Now, how was it then for you in this grief journey as you were going through all of this anxiety? And I know more details are in the book, but since we're at the podcast and we kind of want to know this gray in between part, and then we'll talk about all these gratitude components a little bit, a little bit. We'll sprinkle some of those there because a lot of them are in the book. I was telling Meg, I'm still missing, let me see, the best part, as she said, a few,
Yeah.
few chapters there at the end. The, how was it then with work functioning, to go to work in this type of environment, which is a high stress environment,
Yeah.
being an attorney? So how did you manage that day to day with your grief?
So, I am very dutiful. I knew I had to do my job to take care of my family, and I would show up and I would leave. When I had asked for a reprieve, like I wasn't looking to take off a significant amount of time. I only wanted to do it more on a part time so I could start to heal, because I was exhausted. Because people forget that the whole caring for someone who is sick is very taxing on the person who's the caregiver. And your family as well. I'm not the only one who did help my take care of my mother. I mean, it was tangential. I was doing it with my family, but it was exhausting because I would drive back and forth from Orlando to Miami. And, so when it came down to the time to go back into my life again, I was like, I can't do this. And I've never been that. Like, I never have been, I can't do this. I've always been, okay, push through, you'll be all right, you know? And this is the first time I was like, I'm really exhausted. I need a break. And, I had asked and they said no. And I'm just like, wow, this is really amazing. The disconnect, I think, I mean, I had never asked before anything before that. I had never asked for really anything. And they said no. And I think that sent my anxiety more into a spiral. And, it's funny because thank God I had certain tools because I would be sitting in court. I'd have a docket of like 60 cases, just because we did masters, and I would start to have anxiety attacks. And if you know what an anxiety attack feels like, it's like you leave your body. So a lot of the tools that I had been taught were you have to somehow get yourself back into your body. And sometimes people put, ice on their tongue, that cool sensation, you feel it back. Or I used to wear a rubber band around my wrist and I used to like pull at it
Snap it.
just to feel, yeah. Or I would like literally pinch my skin. I would, because literally if I got up and started screaming in a courtroom full of people, that would certainly have me, put in a
Committed.
yeah, committed.
Yeah.
And I was like, I will not give it to anybody. I will not lose my, what, so that anybody has anything to say about Meg losing her, what. So I would be sitting there and I was like, holy God, just deep breaths. Oh, one of the greatest things that I learned, and this is for anyone who's suffering from anxiety, is pick a multiplication table, like the numbers, like 5 times 5, because logically your brain will go back into, if you start thinking mathematically, and honestly, it would become a process. So I used to go 5 times 5, 25, 5 times 6, 30. And it would take me out of that creative side of my brain where, I'm dying. You're going
That
to
is so
die.
good. That is so good. Yeah, it's like to switch it, to just switch the
Yes.
brain pattern right there. I
Right.
had never thought of the multiplication
Oh, yeah,
being
no.
something. Yeah, because it's something you could just completely hone in and focus on that has nothing to do.
Right.
Because sometimes people, it's kind of like how they say of when you're falling asleep, counting sheep. I'm assuming that that counting component is kind of like as if you're taking yourself
Well,
out
calm
of
your
that.
brain down for sure. That is for sure. Like, I was like, calm your brain down. My brain is
Yes.
literally in overdrive right now. And, one of the things that I used to do in court a lot was hear stories of people who were telling these horrible stories about what happened to them in their country of origin, since it's asylum cases a lot of times. And I would be like, oh my God, this is going to happen to me. So I had to, like, after a while, people forget that when you're subjected to something over and over and over again, you do internalize it. And after 20 years in court, I was internalizing this stuff. Anyway, long story short, I did in fact get an offer. I did petition for a leave of absence and I got it. And it was like for 6 weeks, but at least it gave me some semblance of an opportunity to just rest, and figure out a plan. And, my mother told me before she passed away, stress is going to kill you. I just want you to know, an overwhelming stress, because everybody has stress in their life,
Yes.
but like an overwhelming, chronic stress over and over, not good. And don't want to have regrets at the end of your days. You don't want to like leave it on the table. I mean, not leave it on the table. You want to make sure that you are in this world doing what you're supposed to do. And I was just like, well, I want you here. I didn't want you to go anywhere. I want to play with you. That's kind of my thought process. But, what is that I started asking questions of what I wanted to do. What did I want? What did I want? And then things started to unfold because I started paying attention. And I've used this quote many times because this is literally the quote that I've used to follow my life. It's pay attention, be astonished, and tell all about it. And I made it a point to start pay attention to things in my life, and I was like getting excited, like get surprised, get excited about it, and then tell like the storytellers, right, the podcast, the how do I tell, well, oh my God. And I was like, you'll never believe what happened to me, you'll never believe what just happened to me. So it became an unfolding of excitement rather than dread, which
And in that excitement of like looking at things, you were also able to see things that were connecting you with your mom in that journey.
yes.
So, can you share some of those little moments in which you kind of saw them as messages? And there's a lot of other things that unfolded afterwards of your dreams that you would have and so
Yes.
forth. But could you share a few of those, please?
So things that were happening, like starting to paying attention to my mother playing a role. Like, I mean, the biggest one is clearly when I was on stage with Oprah Winfrey.
I
You know,
know that's the
I
one
mean,
I wanted you to say because I was like, I just didn't want to. I'm like, does she want to say it or does she want the people to wait till they read the book?
yeah, no,
No,
that
it's
one
I
was
get
kind of like,
chills.
yeah, that was kind of like you'll never
Yeah.
believe what
So,
just happened to me, right?
do you want to share about the dream and then what happened that day, or do you want people to read it?
Well, it's interesting because, I'm one of these people that I generally like to know the ending before the actual story unfolds.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, so it's maybe not, I'm one of those spoilers, certainly, oh, here comes Meg, she's gonna ruin the story again. Like I have a book club and they're always like, oh, you read the ending before you finish the book. I said, yeah, because I wanted to know whether it was worth my while to
It's so
invest the
funny.
time.
That's so funny because I think my son is really similar, and he likes to actually watch movies we've already seen, and maybe it is because he already knows how it's gonna end, so
Yeah,
then he can actually enjoy the process somehow better.
yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Well, people who are anxious, people who have a lot of anxiety, it will make it more enjoyable because
Yes.
you're not like looking to because sometimes things happen that are nothing to do with us, but because we
Mhm.
experience it on a like a physical level, when our emotion, like you're feeling it. Like they always say, when you run a race in your mind, it's already as if you ran the race in your
Yes.
body. But people who are really, really sensitive and empaths, like we were speaking to, that you feel it. You're like you feel everything. You're just like, I don't know if this goes ugly and dark. I don't even know if I want to finish this stuff,
Mhm.
so I'll go to the
Mhm.
end. But so for me, it was kind of this whole process where, as far as Oprah is concerned, I mean, I just found she was so inspirational. She is so inspirational. For me, I always got so much from watching her shows, so much from learning from what her guests had to share. Just so much about the human experience that sometimes made me feel, and my friend always says this to me, we're
Which
never
one?
going to
Denise?
die.
Is it Denise? The what?
No,
Is it?
Denise didn't say this is Teta, but Teta
Oh,
would
okay.
always say to me, "You're not going to die of terminal uniqueness. There is someone in this world who is going through exactly what you're going through. You just got to find them to get the wisdom you'll need to get through what you're going through now." So,
Mm.
that was the whole gist behind. I was like, okay, I like negotiated with God, and I said, okay, you get me through this. I will absolutely share the vulnerability of my story so that I can help somebody who's going through this as well. And whether or not someone aligns to this, and it's a very self-involved process writing a memoir. I mean, you're talking about yourself the whole time. My husband keeps saying, "Oh my God, aren't you tired of you?" And I said, "Sometimes you are. Like, I'm tired of me. I just like," but yet at the same time, it's as if I knew what I needed when I was going through the hardest times. And if I had read a book where I could go down to the end and say, "Oh, that can happen," it gives you hope. And
Yes.
I literally align with the notion that depression is sadness without hope. So if you infuse hope into somebody's, vernacular or whatever, or like life spirit, then that might be the one thing that they might need to hear when they're feeling so desperate that it's
Mm.
never going to change. But yeah, it did for me. And you
Oh,
share that, it's beautiful. I mean, it's really, you see a light come on. And I have to tell you, Kendra, outside of the Oprah story, on my own, I had an experience where I was a part of this group called Tonight is a Tonight. It was a tinnitus group, and there was a beautiful person online in the evening, because I was up a lot of night looking through social media, and he literally was on the verge of suicide. And
mm,
I was like, I'm going to sit here with you because I know what you're going through, and I'm going to walk you through this, and then we're going to get you on a plane tomorrow to go be with people who are going to help you, surround you with love, because you can't go through this by yourself. And I love to say that he's doing so well right now. Not that I am that. And there was another woman online too. The two of us were just bombarding him with love. We're like, you got this. It's only for tonight. It's only for now. Let's stay together and we'll get you out tomorrow, because he was by himself. And it's
mm,
maddening. It's very maddening, the whole experience, when you have this loud yelling in your head and you're just like, the noise is so intense. And if you have it to the extent that I did, and there's other individuals as well, it's like this is never going to change. But that hope component comes in, and you're like, It does. You will be all right. You will be all right. You will be right. Well, we're going to get through this. You're going to get help. You need to be surrounded by. So for me, it's like, if I can be that spark of light, I tend to try to back to the mom role in life, right? Right. I do
Mhm.
less well with my children
Then
because
mothering others, then mothering others.
mothering
I
others
under
fine. There's something about having your more skin in the game with your people that came out of your body, or even just not biological, but they're your people,
the people you're
so
raising, the
yeah.
children you're raising, and that you see. It's so true. It's so much easier to mother others. Yeah. So going back to that role, that's kind of how you feel when you're
Yeah.
sharing these stories of yourself, these and being an accompaniment to someone else that's going through something so hard. And I think that that's the reason. I mean, your book is that. Your book is that for somebody else, right? It is that spark of joy. The other things you do, the podcast, the TEDx, all these things that can bring that relatability to someone else, because again, we can't experience what somebody else is experiencing,
Right.
regardless if it's been the same. We both have lost a mom to cancer.
Yeah.
I can't tell you I know how you feel. I can't say
Right.
that. I
Right.
can't. I can relate to what you went through. You can relate to what I went through, but we are not the same person. We don't come with the same set of beliefs, same set of relationship itself that was your unique relationship with your mom, just like
Right.
my unique relationship with my mom. So to find someone else that you can relate in this process of grief, and that does spark that sense of hope that, okay, there is some light at the end of the tunnel in this grief journey, is like the best thing we can do, I guess,
Well, that's
to
that's what you're
comfort.
doing with your show. I mean, the gratitude does come from grief because somewhere along the line you're going to see life differently. They always say the contrast in life. You won't understand how wonderful the sun is unless it rains. And even
Mhm.
how wonderful the rain is if it's been just too sunny and it's burning down the land. I mean, that's what you're doing with your show is you're helping people maybe open their mind to there is something, to
Mhm.
appreciate and value with all of this, even though it feels so crappy. It
Yes,
feels
that's the thing. It doesn't negate that what we went, it's like it's not saying that what we went through, oh, thank goodness I went through that. No, that I always say that's not what we're trying to say when we're saying that we're grateful. Uh Now that we're standing in gratitude, it's not like, oh, I'm so glad that happened. No. It's not. If we could take that away, we would. But if that had not happened, we would not be who we are today, right? So therefore, there is a component of gratitude for that experience, even though we still, are grieving.
Yeah, it is, and it's going to be a constant grieving. It's just a
Mhm.
different part of the process. They always say Kubler-Ross always said there's 5 stages. Well, it doesn't mean that you are going to be like linear in your stages, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you're done. It's
Mm-mm.
kind of like you go there and you come back, and you go there and you come back. But that's the human existence, right? I mean, I think before my mom passed away, I had this childlike notion of, you know, it's like watching an American movie. At the end of the day, the hero wins because all Americans demand for that. I want to leave there knowing that the downtrodden hero on the journey will come out victorious. But it's like, okay, but sometimes it's not clean and tidy in a box that's a bow and looks like Tiffany's.
I was thinking of a Tiffany's bow too.
There you go. We're on the same wavelength. I love it. Oh my god, that's so funny.
Yeah, it's true. Life is not like that. Okay, so going back to the signs,
Yeah.
tell me then some of these things that happen that you could, with the Oprah, people, you have to read that for sure. But the fact that you got to be on stage with Oprah,
Yeah.
that's like amazing because you manifested it and you got that. But what were some of these little nuggets, other nuggets of connection that you had with your mom?
Well, I have to say one of my favorite. So there's an organization called Love Button Global Movement, and it has these buttons and it has love on it. And I was like, this is amazing. So I'm a big fan of Coldplay. I would sit during those months, I say months, of just desperation and sadness in my closet, listening to Yellow on like a fast forward, like it kept going, and I felt like really like my mother was singing this song to me. And yellow is not my favorite color. Literally, yellow is a color of happiness, but it's not I'm a black wearing girl. Like I love black. It always makes you thinner looking. It does like always a good the little black dress. But I would be listening nonstop to this song as if my mother were in fact singing it to me. And I, saw this love button because Coldplay was on concert and they were like going around there handing out all these buttons. So I was like, okay, I'm a big asker. Like you have to go and ask big, and that's the manifesting process, right? You have to ask, believe, and receive. So I found love button. I went on the Chris Martin website. I wanted to say thank you to him. I wanted to thank Chris Martin, give him my first book, say thank you to all them, all the members, Guy, all of them, Johnny, everybody from Coldplay, to thank them for, getting me through this really rough time in my life with music, because music is that heals my soul. I mean, and you'll see in part 3 in the book, it kind of got me through what I was doing with stupidity at sometimes, but yeah, music will give you that, beat to your step, maybe that kick to your step, right? But I love to think that, okay, this is crazy, but as if my life is like
It's
a
a musical.
soundtrack. There's a soundtrack behind me, right? You too, right? Like if I'm in a moment, I can literally hear dun 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 dun. I'm like, oh my god, did that just happen? Because that's like me. I like that's more fun,
Yeah.
than just stillness and silence and
Oh
whatever.
my gosh. I'll tell you an anecdote of that after we get off. But for me, it's not that. For me, it's that people sometimes you say something and I already think of a song. Like if you say something and it's part of the lyrics of a song, I'll just start blurting it out. And you could be saying something so deep and something, but you
Yeah.
say something and I'll like, and it was all yellow,
Oh
and I
yes,
might say, and you're like,
exactly,
it's like, or,
exactly.
something. I'm like, what? I'm like, sorry. It's like,
Oh
I
my god.
relate to some.
Well, the minute I found that you were from Colombia, I was like, ya me voy pa Cali, Cali, ya me voy. I was like, oh my God, give me some salsa and merengue. I mean, that was the most incredible thing in the world when I learned how to dance that, because when your body gets to move to music like that, it's nothing better, right?
Yeah.
So with regards to this Love Button,
Yeah.
I had emailed them, said I wanted to send you my book, and the founder of Love Button got back to me. And it was, I don't even know if he realizes how poignant and profound that call is, but it was right before I was trying to decide what to do with my job, whether I was going to resign or not. And he says to me, I am so proud of you. And that is something my mother used to say to me all the
Oh,
time. And this person I didn't even know called me out of the blue, said this to me, and he goes, I want to invite you to a Love Button fundraiser at Chris Martin's house in Malibu. Take Denise with you. Denise is my beautiful friend Denise.
and this is because you had you mentioned Denise in your first book? Had you mentioned her in that book that you were giving them? Or
No,
how
so
did she
Denise.
contact? Yeah.
So my first book, Magical Guide to Bliss, I
Yes.
had a book launch at Books and Books in Coral Gables, and
Okay.
Denise and I had a really wonderful relationship because she was a judge, she still is, in immigration court, and I was a prosecuting attorney, a trial attorney there. And after our hearings were all finished, we had a friendship, and it was like a really soul to soul friendship. And I had asked her if she could introduce me at my
Oh.
Books and Books event, and she gave this beautiful introduction. Well, one of the things that I sent out to Love Button, because everyone likes videos and everyone likes being heard, so I
Mhm.
sent the video of my Books and Books presentation out
Got it.
to the I didn't know who I was sending it to, the universe, right? Let's go to the
Uh-huh.
universe. And he said, I want to invite you and Denise to be my
Got it.
guests
Because he
out
had seen that video. So
there. Yes,
that's what it was. Because even in the book, I was like, how did he know
yes,
to tell her that? I didn't get that part of
yes,
that.
yes,
So then, okay, so
yes,
then you go with your husband and Denise
yes.
to Malibu.
To Malibu. Super
to Colt
excited. I'm a
To
fangirl.
Chris.
I'm a total fangirl. Like
Yeah.
okay, and especially with a lot of authors that I love too, I'm a fangirl. I just like if somebody touches my life, like I feel like the gratitude needs to be expressed. I need to tell them how much I love them, how much you changed my
Mhm.
life. Listen, as an author myself, I'm like, thank you. I love that. Thank you. and I know people have more of a, a need to tell people how much they hate things, but I'm like, don't tell me all the
Why?
good things. Yeah.
Why do people spend all that time
No,
on Yelp giving people bad reviews?
I
Why do people do
know.
that? I don't
Oh,
understand.
oh, but I do love language. And one of my a friend got a review that said this drivel, and I go, I love that word. So I've been
Dribble?
taking drivel, drivel. So I've been telling my kids, don't give me your drivel.
Drivel.
Like
I'm gonna look at that up, that word up. What does it
drivel,
mean? Dribble
drivel. I know it's like what?
sauce?
Well, it's
Yeah.
very visual. I'll tell you
Yeah.
that much. But anyway,
Yeah.
um,
Okay,
so
so you go there. Yeah,
we
you go
go
to
there, we get
California.
invited, and it's this really wonderful, gathering. He has Dr. Sadeghi is Habib Sadeghi and his beautiful wife Sherry Sammy, both doctors. They were hosting this event, and they're the founders of Love Button. And they were just so kind. And he's like, "You came," because I mean, random person from Miami flies out to
Mhm.
California and LA, and I came with my entourage, right, with my husband and my dear friend Denise. And I was like, "Here I am!" Like insanity, right? Like literally. I
My gosh. How did you decide like what to wear to the
I
star-studded
know, I
event?
was
Like,
like, "Oh my god," like, I was like, I wore this maxi dress. It was just look, honestly, if I it's so funny because one of the things I'll tell you is, like, a lot of some of the ethnic women in court used to come in their Sunday best, like, with
uh-huh.
sequins to court, right?
Uh-huh.
Because they really were showing a great deference, right? And I was really contemplating, "What do I do?" Like, this is an outdoor party, I had no idea. I wanted to be trust like, I got to feel comfortable in what I wear, and I have a decent fashion sense, so I wore what I wore, and but my husband and I were sitting there, and right before Chris Martin started playing because we
Chris.
aren't
Good
close,
old Chris. Yeah, yeah.
we're
First
not
name
close
basis.
friends. I mean, he's met me twice and probably doesn't remember me from Adam, or three times actually. So he starts to sing his first song out was Yellow. And I just
Mm,
felt like my mother was right there with me. I think I
mm,
did start to cry. I just felt so overwhelmed with this sense of gratitude, as if it was a nod from the universe. You've gotten yourself this far, Meg. So I looked
mm,
at my husband. I said, I have to quit my job. I said, I
mm,
have to resign. I said, there's nothing that I can do there anymore. The
mm.
walls, the doors, everything are closing on me. I can't stay here. And that is what I did, much to his chagrin, with all due respect and love. And he, in his own way, has stood by me for these years, of my butterfly-ness, the magical
Love it.
pie in the sky mentality. But he was also there when I was through the worst of the agony. And it must be really hard to look at someone you love going through that and not being able to do anything to help them, which is
Me-
how I felt for my mother.
Meg, I was just gonna say hello. You do know how it feels. I was just gonna interrupt you and say exactly that. You do know how it feels, that helpless feeling. You do,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
because you
it's a
went through that.
terrible
Yeah.
feeling. Yeah, especially I would say this for women, yes, but for men because they like to fix it. They want to
Mm,
fix it,
mm,
and
mhm.
you couldn't fix me. I mean, I just had to go through it.
And giving you that space, this is happens with my husband too. Like when I want to cry, I really just want to cry. I don't need to be fixed in that moment. I
Yeah,
just need to be allowed to express those emotions. It's not
yeah,
like it's like how what can I do? I'm like, no, just let me just right now have my moment of just crying and grief. That's all I need right now is for you to know that there's nothing right now to be fixed. This
yeah,
emotion is normal. This expression of my emotion is normal,
yeah,
but I appreciate you acknowledging maybe a hug, maybe this, but there's
yeah,
nothing that you could say or do right
yeah,
now to fix how I'm feeling.
yeah.
So then you turn around, you tell them this is how long after your mom's passing that this event happened and that you decided to quit your job. How long
That was
after?
May 2017 when
So
I
a
decided.
year.
Yeah, it was. No, it was no, it was a
Oh,
good
oh wait, your
2017.
mom passed
6 years.
2000.
Yeah, it was.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. So, sorry, 17. Right. It's because I'm stuck with April 12th
Yeah.
of the, but it was, oh,
Right.
okay.
It
Yeah.
took me a long time to it, you know what, though I was really paying attention to what was happening. Like I knew I couldn't do it irresponsibly and put my family in a situation that, economically or even just, on a, a level of, support mindset. My son was starting, actually he was starting high school that next year. So I thought that was kind of good timing because, you know, and my daughter was, in, grammar school.
Kindergarten. Hmm.
It was a good time to do it. Um, as if there's any other good times to do it. I just felt no guilt about it.
Hmm.
I didn't need, look, I was going to deal with the loss of my identity as a trial attorney, as a prosecutor, as those dreams, also grieving the dreams that I had
Yes.
there, had I wanted to bring, a different mindset to my agency. I had a lot of visions to help, the people who are working there, because like I said, people who sit and listen to these kind of cases over and over again, it's a significant impact on them too. And also there was the people who are coming to court all the time. So I thought I could do a lot there. But like I said, a lot of the doors were closing in on me and the options were very few. And I was like, okay, well, that was the faith component, right? Leap of faith, right? Oh my God, and you're just praying that parachute let me open, but it doesn't for quite a bit. You're just like, I'm trying
until
to
your
support.
nose is until your nose is grazing the grass as you're touching the grass
Right.
as you're about to land.
And
Then
then try to explain it to everybody who's watching you do what you do. And I'm like, she's crazy. She's literally lost her mind. And a lot of people do say that because maybe they can't really contemplate it. But I always say the people who risk much are the ones who have a chance to gain much. And we're not talking about financial. We're talking about everything in your life, in your in your journey, and in everything. And I was like, well, magical thinkers. I mean, you're not very limited, but you have to understand that we live in a world where there are people who are not magical
yes,
thinkers. And I always, I like to believe that my husband picked me because we are like the yin and the yang, certainly very different, but with foundationals that are the same. So,
mm.
with that, the journey continued when I decided to go follow and find the lighthouse I saw when my mother died. Um, which, if you tell people that I'm going to go find the lighthouse where my mother is died, what they're like, what are you doing? And how things effortlessly unfolded from that point
Do you
on.
have a picture? Are you pointing to a picture of it right there as you were talking? How you turned around? Was there a picture of it
The
around near
lighthouse.
you? Oh,
Well,
I don't know how you turned around and like pointed. It was as if you're such a visual person. I
no,
I could see you seeing the lighthouse. That's why I'm like, is there a picture of it
I'll
right
tell you.
there?
I'll tell you. I have like I do vision boards, and I'll tell you right next to me are all the vision boards.
Oh,
So
wow, that's
you
amazing.
can see them. The lighthouse itself. I have a. It's so funny because we're all looking for this lighthouse, and I had to go to in Spain. But even right outside my door, I on Key Biscayne, on the end of Key Biscayne, there is this incredible lighthouse. I just saw it yesterday, and I'm like right outside. It's like the whole alchemist kind of story. He goes travels the world only to come back and find it's right there, right
It's in
beside
this
them. You
with
don't have
him.
to go anywhere, right?
And
There's
and you
treasures.
you quote Paulo Coelho. You quote,
Love
so
it.
I love this because
Love
every chapter you start with a quote that, and so it's like, oh, that's beautiful. That's the one in Key Biscayne. Oh,
That's the
it's
one in
so
Key Biscayne. Yes, it's so beautiful. Yes.
beautiful. So every chapter, Meg starts with a quote. So it gives an insight a little bit of the feeling and the mood of that chapter, and also an insight into your your world too. And your perspectives on even death. I because of the quotes you chose, I can see what it is, that death represents to you, too, and that continuity as well. So yeah, so go ahead, continue, because I you were probably finished, and then I interrupted with the thinking that you're seeing. I'm ADD, as you can see, but I'm like, as you're like looking at them, like, oh, where does
No, no, but
so
it's just I think the funny thing is that lighthouses can be,
anywhere,
you can be the light, you can be the lighthouse for somebody. You
correct?
can be that light that people need to follow to get themselves out of that darkness. And it's so symbolic and now metaphorical at the same time. But one of the things, and I love Paulo Coelho. I mean, I don't even know how like these seeds were planted in my mind because of a friend of mine who gave me all of his books. But mine was by the river Piera. I sat and wept, and it was like the whole grief. It was grief, and he embodied it in such a way, in a mystical way, that the way I could hear it best. And I
Mhm.
and I say this to a lot of people. There is no set prescription for every person that is the same. every person has their own journey, has their own process. You have to figure out what that is for yourself. And I even think as writers, even as writers, you have to figure out what kind of writer you want to be. And I love he's one of my, I call them my book angels. I always say that Paulo Coelho embodies the Joseph Campbell hero's journey as well as Liz Gilbert does. So I found that my mantras were male and female, those two together. But Paulo, had me seeing beyond the veil.
Mm.
And that gave me a feeling that I must be somewhat special because I do experience life not as it's seen, but perhaps as that mystical, imagine of it, because I know my mother is here, and I know when people show up in my life, she has something to do with it. And I love the fact that the conversation can continue beyond this reality into another. And I'm always looking for those signs, like you keep speaking to. And I find them, and I find them all the time. I find them all the time. And, I mean, Wayne Dyer is one of my favorite authors. And I
And
had
you
the
met him.
I
I
did.
saw a picture in the back of your book that you met him too.
I walked right up to him and I was like, "Hello, I'm Meg." And he said, "Hello." And I said to him, I said, "Listen, you told me to design the cover of this book that was called The Sunrise of My Soul's Bliss so that I can actually see it coming to fruition. Can you sign it for me?" And he goes, "Well, this is very interesting." I said, "Yes, but I feel like you are my teacher and you need to give me the A. So stamp it." It's like, stamp it. And he's like, "Who is this girl?" But
You're
he
so
always said,
straightforward. I love that.
I'm like, look, honey,
Bold,
I was just
bold.
like, opportunities, how many times are they going to come around, right? So I was like, I'm taking advantage of this. But he always says, you will see it when you believe it. And I have truly come to believe that my mother could be here or my mother cannot be here. What do I choose to believe? And I choose to believe that she's still here with me, just in a different and more expansive, right? And as we all will be, right? As we all are. Because even after this interview with you today, I'm going to remember your beautiful face and I'm going to be grateful for your part in my journey because, of that sunshine and light you're bringing to me. So,
Mm. Same to you. And you know what? I have to tell you, I ended up using your book. I was coaching a client and I said, hold on a second. I said, I'm reading a book. I can't tell you, like it hasn't been released yet, but I have to read you a quote from here. And so I actually I highlighted one and I read it to her, but the thing is that this client, butterflies have had a huge meaning in her grief journey. And so when I just went like this and showed her the cover, so that she could see what it was, and I read her this one: if there never was any change, there would be no such things as butterflies, by Wendy Mass. So that's just so beautiful. And I want to ask you then, before we close up, the reason of the name then, Butterfly. What with Butterfly Awakens, what inspired you for the title of your book?
So interestingly enough, the original name was well, the first name was The Sunrise of My Soul's Bliss, and
Oh,
it
the
was to
one that you had,
right.
Wayne
It,
Dyer. Okay.
so it was a compilation of the Magical Guide to Bliss and the memoir, and then I had a beautiful editor who basically said, "This is too big. You can't put a 700, 800 page book out into the world. You have to break them up into two parts." So I did, and then I called it, well, and I'm Italian, right? The Rinaldi Nocera, and I called it La Bella Farfalla, which means the
Oh,
beautiful
the
butterfly in
butterfly.
Italian, right? And I was told, that it might not be a commercial title because no one understands really what La Bella Farfalla is.
Oh,
All
and the farfalla, they think that you're talking about pasta because
pasta.
farfalla.
Yeah. What is this? Is it pasta? What is this? So I had one of the one of the things that I value really right now in my life is the relationship I have with my family, my sisters and my father, and it's really profound, my extended family. My father and I truly believe in a consciousness mentality where, more people wake up to what's happening in the world and around them, the more enlightened we all can be and elevate our own existence from a state of, fear to a state of faith. So an awakening, when somebody awakens, they come to their life in a different way. And it's a conscious approach to this experience that we have, this once around, that starts from like, you know, numbing out to actually being a part of it. And the more people who are awake and alive and filled with light, the better off we all are. So the butterfly awakens means that butterfly is actually taking a risk to break out of their cocoon into the light again after that period of metamorphosis. And, what better gift can you give someone to invite them to be alive again, come alive to their dreams, come alive to their life, come alive to their light. And with that, how many of us have an opportunity to just experience, this experience that we all are walking through in a different way by awakening to it and writing their own story and creating their own journey and dancing to their own music and all of the things that, make this life so wonderfully lived, so amazing. Because there's always two ways you can look at the world in the morning. There's that wonderful Einstein quote, but also is that they say, you know you know good morning, or God, it's morning, right? So it's like, either way, it's your perspective and you have control over, at least how you see when you're, at your lowest, even you can wake up and ask and reach out and, start to believe in your life again. So that's pretty much the awakening part. And then the butterfly is just how pretty are butterflies, like butterfly, butterfly,
No,
butterfly.
no,
And
and
then
it was so cute, the little package I got sent for the thing. So
awesome,
adorable. All the different little butterfly little, things and in it. So beautiful, the packet that
awesome,
you sent. Thank you so much. It was
you're so
so
welcome.
it's such a joy to talk to you and feel your energy. You can see how you're touching, moving me with your words and the passion behind the words, as good Italian blood
Yeah.
that we have.
Mm.
So thank you so much. And so the book's official release date, please, and how
So it
people
is
can
September
get it.
7th. Yes, September 7th, 2021. I do have a giveaway actually, up until September 6th. If you buy the book, pre-order it, and you send me your receipt to Meg Nocero at mac.com, you'll enter the giveaway for my Butterflies and Bliss box, which is all my books. Yeah, I will be sending you all my books, and maybe even a tiara, because I love tiaras, and essentially, it's like the crown.
She's wearing one right now. Hold on.
I,
I got to take a picture of this
oh,
because then
okay.
that way I could post this on social media. Okay, look. Ooh, perfect.
Oh my God.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank
Anything
you.
else that I did not ask that you are like, oh, you don't want to wake up at 3 in the morning thinking, I did not say this on her podcast. I know like all the details. Again, I want the listeners to go and grab the book and read it and find out all these stories of how you met Oprah,
Oh,
how you transitioned out of your job, what kind of took you into this journey to Spain and all these other things, which I still have to read that part and get to learn more. But anything else that you'd like them to hear before we close off?
one of the things I wanted to, share with everyone before we go is, emotions are just that. At its foundation, they're supposed to move through us. And grief and the experience of overcome sadness and overwhelming, it has to move through us. We have to figure out a way, and that tears are a release and laughter is a release. All of these things are a release. It has us keep moving forward. And, it's so funny because, there's no judgment about it. That's the normal human reaction to loss. And if you don't, I don't know if that is something, I try not to be in sadness, and I was figuring numbing out was the way to go. And, that there's no reason, I mean, that's not life. That's not life. To separate yourself and not connect and not collaborate and not be, like you were saying, not being part of my children's experience and seeing their joy growing up and giving them that experience of my insanity or my, wonder or my sense of awe. So I would just say to this, if you're going through it right now and you need a little bit of hope, then just look in the mirror and just do yourself a favor and give yourself a huge butterfly pose hug. And just, it's the best. It's the best because, you don't have to wait for someone else to do it for you. You can give it to yourself. And then, if you do need help, definitely ask. And, I believe in you, and get ready to dazzle, because, that's the hope for all of us, is that we all are here to become and wake up and, shine. And I thank you, Kendra, for doing that for your
Thank
community
you.
and your audience.
Thank you, Meg. Again, this is Meg Nocero. No, no, did I say it this time? Again, I said it like a Latina.
I like the Latin.
No, Cero. No, Cero. I'll say it like an
Nocero.
Italian. No, Cero. I'll say it.
It's la bella farfalla nocero. There you go.
Oh, la bella farfalla nocero. Actually, Italian is what's on my Duolingo, so I can.
Awesome, awesome,
Thank
awesome.
you once. Grazie, grazie, bella.
Prego, prego, prego. È un piacere mio, no? È un piacere
Oh,
mio.
no, piacere mio. Thank you once again. Thank you again so much for choosing to listen today. I hope that you can take away a few nuggets from today's episode that can bring you comfort in your times of grief. If so, it would mean so much to me if you would rate and comment on this episode. And if you feel inspired in some way to share it with someone who may need to hear this, please do so. Also, if you or someone you know has a story of grief and gratitude that should be shared so that others can be inspired as well, please reach out to me. And thanks once again for tuning in to Grief, Gratitude, and the Gray in Between podcast. Have a beautiful day.